Austria was a jam-packed weekend with our second sprint of the season and a full-on race around the Red Bull Ring. But as always, some drivers and teams came out of the weekend better than others, so let's dive into who are our winners and losers from the Austrian Grand Prix. The first winner is Max Verstappen, and not just because he won the race. Max put on another dominant show this weekend, but took it to another level by topping every session, taking the pole positions for both the sprint and Grand Prix, and winning both of these races too. At the end of the race, Max took the somewhat risky decision to pit for softs and also brought home the fastest lap. While we've seen high quality performances from him before, this weekend showed that he feels he can rely on his team to enable him to get the best from a weekend. This was shown by the trust he had in them to execute a fast pit stop under pressure, even when they feel like they didn't want to take that risk. It was his fifth win and eighth podium at the Red Bull Ring, making it his most successful venue in F1, and the points he earned all through the weekend now mean he leads the championship by 81 points to his teammate Sergio Perez. The first loser from Austria is Haas, who had a bit of a tough weekend aside from Nico Hülkenberg's performance over the Saturday sprint day. The race was tricky for the team as Nico Hülkenberg suffered a power unit issue and retired from the race, and Kevin Magnussen, in his words, had very poor pace and ended the day in P18. Their car in the hands of Nico seemed to do very well with the mixed and wet conditions that we saw on Saturday, and this didn't carry over to the dry conditions on Sunday. But the team got some solid points in the sprint and are going to do their homework to get better, according to Gunther Steiner. Ferrari were also a winner in Austria, having a much more competitive weekend after a run of confusing and inconsistent form of late. Through the weekend, Ferrari seemed to be Red Bull's closest competitor. Both drivers were close to the top in practice. Leclerc missed out on pole position for the race by 0.048 seconds, with Sainz close behind in P3. Sainz taking P3 in the sprint and Leclerc earning second in the race. The team were able to test a set of upgrades to filming day prior to the race and were happy with the way they performed at the weekend, saying they delivered the benefits they were looking for in raw pace. Both drivers felt more comfortable with the car, and this no doubt sets them up well for the races to come, especially those with the higher speed turns at tracks like Silverstone, which they felt they performed better at in Austria. Mercedes had a tough weekend in Austria, and this makes them our second loser. While Lewis Hamilton achieved 5th on the grid for the Grand Prix, on Saturday his weekend took a turn as he qualified 18th for the sprint and ended it pointless in 10th. Sunday wasn't much better for Hamilton, and Toto Wolff took to the radio to sum it up, saying, "Lewis, the car is bad, we know. Please drive it." Throughout the race, it seemed Lewis struggled with getting the car to turn, and so breached track limits and received a 5 and post-race 10-second penalty from the stewards. This demoted him to 8th in the final result, with his teammate George Russell in 7th just ahead. Despite their efforts with upgrades, in Austria they simply weren't fast enough to be battling with Ferrari, and much less Red Bull. Our final winner of the weekend was Lando Norris, who really showed the value of the upgrades McLaren brought to Austria. Lando was consistently in the top 5 of the weekend, including taking P3 on the grid for the sprint. Though his race position of 4th was taken after some penalties for those who finished above him, this definitely reflected Lando's performance over the weekend. McLaren's Austrian upgrade was only one part of 3, but based on the evidence from this weekend, the car is going to be very different to the start of the season when all 3 are installed. Finally, AlphaTauri is our final loser, as they had an especially tough weekend and an already tough season for the team. While Yuki Tsunoda has been putting in some solid point-earning performances up to now, this weekend perhaps showed that AlphaTauri needs a solid drive plus a bit of luck to help them earn points, and in Austria they just didn't get this. Both drivers struggled for pace, qualifying for the Grand Prix in P16 and P20 and ending it in P17 and P19. Similarly to Canada, Nick de Vries had a difficult time battling with Kevin Magnussen during the race and was given a 5-second penalty for forcing him off track and into the gravel trap at turn 6. Yuki also had an adventure into the gravel after being a bit too aggressive in trying to gain positions on the first lap, which gave him damage, which he felt may have been why he struggled for pace and to keep the car in the track limits. Track limits was a recurring theme over the weekend, and both AlphaTauri drivers fell victim to it, receiving post-race penalties from the stewards. Overall, the team will be looking to move on from Austria and are aiming to remain positive for the upcoming races, according to their chief race engineer, Jonathan Edels. The Austrian Grand Prix was a thrilling weekend of racing, with some standout performances from drivers and teams. Max Verstappen continued his dominant form, while Ferrari showed signs of improvement, and Lando Norris impressed with his pace in the upgraded McLaren. However, some teams like Haas and AlphaTauri struggled to make an impact, and Mercedes had a difficult weekend too. The race really set the stage for a thrilling British Grand Prix this weekend, as teams and drivers continue to work to hold off the others or to improve. Who are your winners and losers from Austria? Let us know in the comments, like this video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe to Apex for the latest in the F1 world.